I feel that I'm 50% British, 50% Filipino. In Europe, you feel 100% British. And when you're in the Philippines, you feel 100% Filipino. I don't know, it's really weird.
Born in the Philippines, Sherwin Acebuche has wrestled with the tension of his dual identity and has found contentment within it. This is Writer's Mosaic, What We Leave We Carry, the series that tells the true life stories of migration to the UK.
My name is Sherwin Acebuche, and I was born in the Philippines. It's really weird with Filipinos because they tend to kind of like bunch things together. Most of them have got Spanish surname as well. Also, they don't have middle names. Their middle names are your mother's maiden name. So Sherwin is, I asked my mom where she found the name from, and she was like, oh yeah, it was just a retail store or something like that she saw it. And thought, oh, that's a really nice name, so I'll use that. So my surname is Acebuche. It's actually a species of an olive tree, a Spanish olive tree. But my granddad's last name is Tubong Banwa, which is very Filipino. Tubong Banwa means grown from the town. So my name is actually Sherwin Tubong Banwa Acebuche. It's quite funny because, you know, when I say it to my friends, they just laugh. It's a mouthful. So the island that I was born on, the language that they use is Ilonggo, which is kind of like a Creole language with Malay and Spanish words in them. And then in order for you to understand the people from other islands, you need to switch to a national language, which is Tagalog. I was born in an island called Negros. The whole island is pretty much known for its sugar and sugarcane. Because I was a really naughty kid, I was brought to the province, we call it. It is essentially a small town, and I was living with my grandma. I remember the place being surrounded by coconut trees, coffee trees. We didn't really have any electricity, so you could see the Milky Way in the evenings. It's pretty much like a small shack made from nipa, which is this kind of palm that grows on the banks of the river where the mangroves are. So it's, if you imagine like a little sort of shack with like made from bamboo, and the roof is made from nipa, which is the equivalent is like a thatch roof in the UK. So it's very basic, and you had to fetch your water from a well every morning or in the afternoon. And the running water you had to buy from someone who's got a tap. My cousin, both of us were actually left with my grandma because my mom had to leave and work as a nanny in Egypt, and my auntie had to leave her child, Judime, my cousin, so she could work in Japan. I was always surrounded by my aunties and my uncles, but I grew up with a bunch of women and a bunch of cousins. So it felt like, even though I was left there by my mother, because my biological father died when I was 2 years old, and left us with all this debt. That's why she had to leave the country and actually find a job somewhere else. I never felt alone because I was surrounded by people. But it's when you go and socialize as a family, like as a family unit, that's when you kind of feel like, oh my God, where's my mother? I went to a Chinese school, I think during kindergarten. It was a school in a city, obviously, you know, it's concrete buildings, and then you get transported to a province, which is very basic. The school is made with tin roof, concrete. It was tiny. I continued my schooling there until I was, I think, high school. And then my mother met my stepdad in Egypt, I think they met at a party, and I think my stepdad pursued her. She wasn't interested. My stepdad got a job in Stafford, I think. So they moved to Stafford in the UK. I didn't even know that my mom was, married to my stepdad. I was furious when I found out. And I didn't really want to leave the UK, but I was told that, I should have a better life here. So I moved here. I was, I think, 14, 15 years old. What I thought of the UK was the vampires lived here. I was told, those people were pale because there are castles there, and there are vampires that live here. And like in the evening they'd come out and they'd that's what I thought of the UK, because obviously you didn't have internet back then, or the sort of Western culture that we would see with things like American TVs and American cinema, and although you get taught English, you don't really use it. I was told that there was a Queen Elizabeth. I didn't even know there was a monarchy or anything like that. I was just told that there were loads of vampires living in castles. They came here first, and then I followed them when they bought a house in Banbury near Oxford. This was the first time that I traveled to the capital city, which is Manila. And it was the first time that I went on a plane. I mean, getting onto Manila alone was like, a big culture shock, because you're moving from a small kind of village, essentially. And, with water buffaloes and rice fields and sugarcane and all that greenery. And then you're moving into a massive metropolis. And although I was only there for a couple of days, and then I got on a plane from Manila to Gatwick. And I remember being sat on the plane and they've given me my food. And that was the first time I saw cling film. I didn't know how to open my airplane food. And I was looking at this thing, I was like, what is this? What is this plastic? Why is it stretchy? And then I landed, and it was in July. And I think it was like 27 degrees, but I felt so cold. I remember getting in a car and seeing just a completely different world. And just shock. But then you kind of land here and you're like, oh God, I'm just on my own now. My mom and my stepdad, we didn't really talk, we didn't really speak. My stepdad, we kind of just said hello. It was really awkward. He's Irish. He was born in Cork. I guess that's Irish people and the Filipinos have got similar Catholic upbringings, I guess. So there's kind of, I guess, attitude towards certain stuff that Filipinos and Irish people tend to kind of agree on, and obviously the family values and stuff like that. I got to Banbury, and obviously in the Philippines, a house is a separate unit. So I didn't understand what terrace house was. I was like, do you own all this? There's row of houses? And then I remember going into the terrace house, and I didn't understand why the houses were stuck together. And then my stepdad opened the door, and I was like, so this bit is ours, and there's 3 floors, right? Okay. Who lives in the next one? So I didn't understand the concept of terrace houses. So my first night, I think I just cried. Although I was exhausted, I remember I was just really jet lag, and I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. I was missing home. Yeah, I think I just kept waking up. And then the next day, obviously, was just really weird being in a foreign country. I just remembered feeling so alone. Although I had my mother there, I just felt so alone. And yeah, and then I found out there's no vampires. There were no castles. Like there were castles, but there were no vampires in them. My mom was working in a Thai restaurant, and I was surrounded by Thai people. You know, they really welcomed me. I remember having Thai food for the first time, and I remember the owner asking me if I like hot food. Like I thought hot as in like hot or warm, right? And hot, chili, hot. And I remember my tongue burned so much that because I was still trying to understand what the context of hot and spicy food was, and but I think those 3 months it enabled me to, I guess, open up and come out of my shell a little bit. When school started, then I was able to then kind of, I guess, present myself as this kind of, I was able to talk to other people. And when I started school, I remember like I met 3 other kids that were starting at the same time. Twin brothers, Mo and Joe, US, American, a Nigerian guy called Chuma Imembulu, who started. So 4 of us pretty much like we were introduced and we just kind of hung out together. So then I didn't feel as alone. It was really hard to, I guess, integrate with the British kids. The South Asians ones was like, you and me are both brown, so we should hang out together. It was always kind of trying to look for your community. My mother would, when Asians come into, Southeast Asians especially, would come into the restaurant, she would always try and figure out if they were Filipino or not. It's always trying to look for a community. At A-levels, I remember at end of year kind of party, we were separated into like 3 different coaches. The blue coach, the red coach, or the orange coach. The blue coach was the cool kids, the ones that were popular. The red coach was like, well, the alright kids. And then the orange coach was like the uncool ones. So obviously we were the uncool ones and we were put in the orange coach. And I remember like being like, obviously being put in that coach, but actually we had a great time because there were the oddballs there. I went to Newcastle, so I wanted to get as far as north as I could. I was like, I'm not ready for London, so I applied all the way to Aberdeen, to Edinburgh, and ended up in Newcastle. And I remember getting there for the first time and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And it took a few months for me to understand the Geordie accent. After I finished my GCSE, my dad got a contract to work in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. So I was left here, after 2.5 years of being here, I was left here all by myself. And I was staying with my mom's German friend. So I was renting a room in her house. So I had to go through A-levels by myself. And while holding a job in a Thai restaurant and then another job, weekdays at a furniture shop. All that, I guess, during A-levels, I was pleased to leave all that behind because then going to university means actually everyone's in the same situation. Everyone's been left by their parents. It felt pretty hard being left all by yourself. But the good thing, I guess, that I found from it was that every time there was a school holiday, I would go to where they were. So then I was able to experience Malaysian culture. I would live there for 3 months with them during summer holidays. So I guess it made it better. But I remember just missing them. There's this intrinsic kind of attitude that we have with Filipinos that we don't give up. Because giving up means you failed. And you don't want to be a failure to your family. I was able to go home, I guess, every 2 years and see my grandma and my cousin. But then again, I had support from my auntie, my mom's friend, Pina. If I can't go to Malaysia or whatever, I'd stay with her in Banbury. And she's got 2 kids, Alex and Yvette. Whenever I go back to Banbury, I'd work in a Thai restaurant, and they welcome me, and they welcome me, as a family, and that felt like a family unit as well. I can't go back to the Philippines now. It's like not to live. I guess I could retire there, but I don't even know. But I feel like, myself and Tim, for example, whenever we go to places, and they'd always say, you're British, and I'm like, okay, why is that? Because you talk funny, right? So I guess it's the accent. I don't know where my accent is quite a mongrel accent, I guess. Yeah, I feel that like I'm 50% British, 50% Filipino. In Europe, you feel 100% British, and when you're in the Philippines, you feel 100% Filipino. I don't know, it's really weird. My mom is in the Philippines now, but they moved around. So obviously after Malaysia, then they moved to Indonesia, and then they moved to Greece. After Greece, then they moved to Australia, and then Australia they moved to Nauru, and Nauru now they've retired in the Philippines. So they've always moved around. Oh, and they lived in Panama as well. So they moved around, and I guess I couldn't really go with them because it was just a disruptive way of living. So now we've got a micro distillery focusing on Southeast Asian inspired spirits. Myself and my partner, we own a brand called Tazier, which is a tiny primate mainly found in Southeast Asia, the size of a hand, maybe the size of a thumb. There's about 5,000 left in the world. There's such an icon in the Philippines, so they're on the money, they're on the t-shirts, and outside of Southeast Asia you don't really hear about them. So we wanted to raise awareness of their situation. They're endangered now, and we wanted to also kind of shine a spotlight on Southeast Asian culture and heritage, and that's what we are as a brand. My partner is Tim. We've been together for about 15 years. Met in Manchester, then over the course of 3 years we just developed the brand ourselves. It's Southeast Asian inspired, mainly Filipino, I guess. So we work with an importer there, and we send the product over there. And I get to go home, get to spend time with my mom and dad, but not as much because obviously you've got the demands of running a business here. But you get to go home, and the company pays for that. So it's good, I guess, from that point of view. It's really weird, like when I first moved here, because I would dream in Ilonggo with English subtitles. Now it's English. It also depends on the scene of where I am and who's involved in my dream. Here in the UK, because obviously I'm surrounded by my friends and I dream about stuff that happens here. But when I'm in the Philippines, I dream, in Ilonggo and in English. So I guess it depends on the environment. Even when I'm back in the Philippines, it's easier for me to talk in English when I'm in Manila. So my Tagalog is poor, but I can talk to people fluently in Ilonggo. So when I see Filipinos here in the UK, I try and speak to them in Tagalog, but sometimes I struggle putting a sentence together. But when I'm talking in English, it just kind of flows easily, and same way with Ilonggo. People always ask, why are you here, Why are you here when you can have white sand and palm trees? But it's great to be there for a holiday, but I'd get I'd be bored if I just sit there and watch a sunset. And it's nice for a 2-week holiday, but I want to go to gigs. I want to go to Glastonbury. I want to go and socialize with mates in a pub, and I want to have a barbecue in the summer. And I want to stay up until 10 o'clock when we've got sunsets here in the UK. There in the Philippines at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it's dark. I hate the cold, especially when it's grey in Manchester and it's cold. You kind of wish, I wish I was somewhere else. But the reality is that I don't think I could live there. The kids are mean. So, you get called all sorts when you're a kid. Banbury is it's a town, but it's not as tiny as most towns. But you go to schools and you get picked on, and you get all sorts, slurs, the C word, the Chinese slur, and you get called that, get shouted at. But then you go, actually, I'm not Chinese, I'm from the Philippines, right? And you go, you need to improve your geography. So you kind of have a comeback a little bit, and my auntie actually taught me that. And you just go, I'm not offended because you don't know what you're saying. But obviously you get that. The slur I get mostly from ethnic people, because like South Asians would just think of us, or black people would just think of us as Chinese, right? And I think white people are a little bit more sensitive to that. But I remember about like 6 months ago, I was checking into a hotel in London. It's a pub with rooms upstairs, and I was checking in, and there was an Irish guy who was like, who said to me, I was like, oh, so where'd you come from? I was like, Manchester. And he was like, no, where do you really come from? And I felt like saying, I said to him, I actually challenged him and said, look, do you mean where's my heritage? It's like, no, where do you come from? So then I challenged him on it, and he got really offended. So, and it was quite funny because the person that was checking me in was Eastern European. She said to me, I understand what you're saying. And she was like backing me. But obviously the Irish guy just thought like, that was bad of me to challenge him. I'm a proud British Filipino. You don't have to be British. You don't have to be 100% Filipino. Similar to my accent, it's a combination of both cultures, and that's what makes this country so special, is that immigrants built this. And you look at the NHS, and there's a lot of Filipino nurses and doctors that work there. When I was growing up, I hated being Filipino because you get picked on as a kid, and the older that you get, the more you embrace that part of your culture, your heritage. But it doesn't mean that you're not British because you're also Filipino. It doesn't have to be a battle. Two things can coexist, and that people should celebrate that. People need to understand that. I guess it's not our choice to be here, and we came here because of circumstances. But we've embraced being here, and that we should celebrate that diversity rather than use that to divide us.
Sherwin Acebuche was talking to Ellie Dobing.